She disappeared from the screen overnight. No goodbye, no explanation, just silence. One day she was America's favorite comedian. The next she was erased. And she wasn't the only one. Several celebrities found themselves suddenly shut out from the most important stage in entertainment. When the king of late night turned cold, careers crumbled. What kind of television icon builds success on both charm and control? Let's explore this fascinating chapter of TV history. The golden age of late night. There was an era when a single television program held unprecedented influence over entertainment careers. Earning a spot on this show meant everything. A successful 5-minute appearance could transform your entire professional trajectory overnight. But this opportunity came with unspoken rules that everyone understood but nobody discussed openly. Cross certain invisible lines, and you'd find yourself permanently excluded. Major entertainment figures suddenly found themselves locked out, not due to lack of talent or audience appeal, but because the host had decided otherwise. Once that relationship soured, the industry often followed suit. Most viewers at home never witnessed these dynamics. They tuned in for comedy and entertainment, unaware of the complex power structures operating behind the scenes. How it worked. The consequences could stem from various situations. Sometimes a guest's joke went too far, or they failed to defer appropriately during banter. Other times, business decisions or perceived loyalty issues created rifts. Personal conflicts that began off-camera often ended in complete professional separation. What made this particularly intense was the subtlety. No public confrontations or dramatic announcements occurred. People simply stopped appearing. Industry insiders would offer vague responses when questioned. For those affected, the impact was devastating. Years of career building could vanish without a single return phone call. Being excluded from this platform wasn't merely ego bruising. It could effectively end careers. The real story existed in the absences, the names never mentioned again, the empty guest chairs. Understanding the show's power. To comprehend this influence, we need to examine what made this program so culturally dominant. This wasn't just another talk show. It was a career-making institution. Landing an appearance meant validation and opportunity, especially for emerging comedians or actors promoting new projects. The host possessed impeccable timing and natural charisma. His comedy sketches became legendary, copied by future generations of entertainers. The format he established, monologue, sketches, celebrity interviews, musical performances, became the template for modern late-night television. For 3 decades, he commanded unparalleled influence. Millions watched nightly in an era before streaming or on-demand viewing. You watched when it aired or missed it entirely. The show didn't just entertain. It shaped careers and launched stars. Behind the curtain. However, when cameras stopped rolling, a different dynamic emerged. The host's approval could elevate careers, but losing that approval could devastate them. This wasn't about missing one television appearance. It meant being removed from industry consideration entirely. Talent bookers stopped calling. Studio executives reconsidered projects. Other programs avoided these individuals, wary of upsetting the late-night powerhouse. No public statements were necessary. Silence conveyed everything. The industry understood the unspoken message clearly. The lack of clear boundaries made situations even more precarious. There was no rule book. You discovered the limits only by crossing them. The protege's departure. Among the host's closest professional relationships was a groundbreaking female comedian he championed from early in her career. During the 1960s, when women in stand-up faced significant barriers, he gave her opportunities and mentorship. She'd been struggling, considered finished at age 31 when he brought her onto his show. After her successful debut, he publicly endorsed her talent, changing her career overnight. He made her a writer, then his permanent guest host, an unprecedented position of trust and visibility. In 1986, she received an offer to host her own program on a new network, a historic opportunity to become the first woman hosting a major late-night show. She faced an agonizing decision. She learned she wasn't being considered as his eventual successor. so she accepted the competing offer. The critical mistake: she didn't inform him directly before the news became public. He discovered it through industry channels. His response was immediate and permanent: complete silence. Phone calls went unanswered, letters unreturned, reconciliation attempts ignored. She was immediately banned, and anyone appearing on her new program faced similar consequences. Former staff members reported he felt deeply betrayed, not about her career move, but about the perceived disloyalty of not approaching him first. Years of silence. She remained heartbroken for years. In later interviews, she called him the most important figure in her career. She wrote annual letters hoping for response. None ever came. Even footage of her previous appearances was effectively archived away, her contributions largely erased from the show's history. When he passed in 2005, she admitted crying not just for the cultural loss, but because they never reconciled. She expressed in interviews that she would have done anything to repair the relationship, but he remained unwilling. Other notable exclusions. Not everyone faced exclusion for intentional offenses. Some simply miscalculated or didn't recognize boundaries quickly enough. One comedian brought an unapproved prop on stage and set it ablaze as a stunt. The network was furious. He faced legal consequences and never returned to the show. Another performer made behind-the-scenes jokes that somehow reached the wrong ears. Despite on-camera friendships, she found herself quietly removed from future bookings. One variety performer brought an uncleared prop, a large stuffed animal, thinking it would enhance his routine. The host disliked surprises that disrupted the show's rhythm. That performer never received another invitation. A talented entertainer spoke candidly about industry discrimination during her appearance, addressing topics considered too controversial for that format at the time. She was never invited back. When comedy turned personal, professional relationships sometimes soured over business dealings. One Las Vegas entertainer outbid the host for partial ownership of a major hotel property. What seemed like a straightforward business transaction felt like territorial encroachment. The host began incorporating pointed jokes into his monologues, comments about appearance, character, lifestyle. These went beyond typical comedy, feeling increasingly personal. Eventually, the entertainer confronted him directly at the studio, demanding the joke stop. They did, but so did the professional relationship. No future invitations were extended. The man behind the persona. Before becoming a television icon, he was a Nebraska kid performing magic tricks, calling himself the Great Carsoni. After military service and university, he worked his way through small radio and television positions. His breakthrough came substituting for an established comedian, revealing his exceptional natural talent. By the early 1960s, he took over the late-night program that would define his career. His gift was making everything appear effortless. Millions tuned in nightly, feeling they were spending time with someone familiar and trustworthy. His wit and timing seemed completely natural. Private struggles. Off camera, he maintained intense privacy. Even colleagues who worked with him for years often felt they never truly knew him. He controlled carefully what the public saw. He married 4 times, each relationship eventually dissolving. His first marriage predated fame, but couldn't survive his rising celebrity. Infidelity became a pattern he later acknowledged. Subsequent marriages followed similar trajectories. Initial glamour, giving way to tension, and eventual separation. He joked publicly about his divorces, but sadness underlay the humor. His final marriage, later in life, seemed more stable and private. Perhaps age or exhaustion with public scrutiny brought different priorities. His relationship with one of his sons proved particularly strained. The young man struggled with addiction and legal troubles, carrying the weight of being his famous father's child. When that son died tragically in 1991, the host's devastation was visible. Retirement and legacy. When he retired in 1992, he truly withdrew. He moved to Malibu, spent time on his yacht, and declined virtually all interviews. He became reclusive, not bitter, simply finished with that chapter of life. Despite stepping away, his influence never diminished. By the mid-1970s, He was television's highest-paid personality. He received major broadcasting awards recognizing his 25-year impact. His influence permeates modern late-night television. The format he perfected, monologues, desk comedy, guest interviews, remains the standard template. Every subsequent host works within the framework he established. Final years. When serious illness came, he'd already largely retreated from public life. Emphysema, from decades of smoking, ultimately claimed him in 2005. True to form, he exited quietly, without fanfare or prolonged goodbyes. He left no memoir or extensive interviews. His legacy exists in the laughter still echoing in reruns, in the format still used nightly, in the careers he launched and influenced. The complex legacy. He wasn't perfect. He could be controlling, cold, even cruel. But he mastered his craft and shaped American culture. He influenced how the nation ended each day, with humor, conversation, and style. That's the paradox of this television legend. Audiences felt they knew him intimately through their screens, yet he remained fundamentally unknowable. He ruled late-night television for decades, leaving an indelible mark on entertainment history.